Good morning. I am Steve Weber, and I am the host of the American Gumption Morning Show. And you are listening live here on the Spirituality Gone Wild channels, and also on the American Gumption Facebook page, and also the American Gumption YouTube channel. So welcome to Thursday, October 29th, just about the end of October here. And yeah, show number 60. So excited to be here. A little bit of weather happening up in the northeast of the country. The hurricane is coming up from the Gulf and arriving here the next 24 hours, but just lots of rain, not even hardly any wind at this point. So that's what's happening weather-wise in the Northeast. All righty. So anyway, I said Thursday, October 29th, I have a great guest coming up, Reverend Winn Henderson M.D, and he's going to talk about the spiritual cure of addiction. And he's got a fascinating story. I've been talking with him the last couple of weeks, and as we got ready to have this interview, so excited to welcome him to the show. And I'm going to do a monologue, and I'm going to tie. It's not going to be a typical movie life lesson. In this, it's not one of the pre-recorded ones from last year that I had made up, and I've showed those over the first 60 shows. I've interspersed them quite a bit. But anyway, this is going to be a movie life lesson, but it's going to be about Lieutenant Dan and Jenny and addictions and self-esteem, and really that ties in with what our guest is going to speak about. But I thought that'll be today's monologue. So that's just coming up in just a minute or so. And then on Friday, tomorrow, we are going to welcome back Brian Gregory of admanity.com. And I have taken the Admanity protocol, and the idea with the Admanity protocol, it's an online test. It takes 5-6 minutes. You answer a series of questions, yes and no, and if you answer it when you know, of course, what your product or service is, and you know who your ideal customer is. And then he gives you language and ideas on how to think about crafting your message. And Admanity is a combination of advertising plus humanity. So it's a heart-centered communication with your ideal client to attract them. So anyway, we're going to do a deep dive into the Admanity protocol and the results that I got for my brand, my business, and I'll share that with everybody tomorrow. All righty, so that's coming up in just like I said, in a few minutes. Now, I want to do today's monologue, and let's just go ahead and we'll change the banner to American Gumption. There it is. Today's monologue is a little bit of a different idea that I've done before. I've been thinking about doing something like this for the last. I've thought about it several times, but I didn't have really the right reason, or it was just too easy to throw up one of the pre-recorded life lessons from the movie that I did last year in recognition of its 25th anniversary, 94 the top scenes and life lessons. Alrighty. So today is a combination one, and really there wasn't one scene that spoke about this, and so that's why it wasn't a life lesson. There's elements of the life lessons of the 94. There's a couple of elements that tie in with this. Anyway, here's what I'm going to talk about is both Jenny and Lieutenant Dan had addictions and low self-esteem, and they really, but what's kind of brilliant, and of course it's the movie, and it's a good story, is that they went from the origins of how this started, and some of that's going to be just speculation and conjecture on my part, and then how it played out, and we saw that in the movie, and then of course what the resolution was, and of course the good guys always win in the end at the movie, and both Jenny and Lieutenant Dan had happy endings, even though they had a lot of drama and trauma and not so happy parts of their life. And so I'd like to lay out those three things. So the first piece will be the origins, where this kind of problem came from, and then how we witnessed it in the course of the movie, and then of course what the resolution was. And so I'll be sharing both Jenny and Lieutenant Dan's story. So Jenny we meet her right at the beginning of the movie. Forrest and Jenny are children, and Jenny's mother tragically had died. When we don't know exactly, but Jenny was just a little baby, a little girl, maybe a couple years old. And so her and her sisters are being raised by their father. And he is what we can assume is suffering from his own addiction, the father of Jenny, because we see him, drinking and not being a very nice man. And Forrest refers to the fact that he was a loving man, always touching and kissing his sisters. So we get the hint that there was abuse, physical and certainly mental and physical abuse that this man was inflicting on these young children. Jenny is the product of that environment. So of course, and so now Lieutenant Dan, okay, we'll leave that. That's the origin of Jenny's story that we know of. And then Lieutenant Dan, now he's raised in a very different environment. No, we don't know any abuse like that he suffered. But what we do know is that he came from a family of warriors, and every generation of his family, going all the way back to the Revolution, had fought and died in an American battle. So there was this legacy and this destiny that he was born into, and the family nurture had, from the time he's just a little boy, he's learning about how he is growing up in this environment where the men go off to battle, and someone in the family at least dies. And so Lieutenant Dan is he's in Vietnam when we meet him, and he's leading the troops, and his destiny is that he's going to be in battle, and whether he survives or not, that's kind of, that's part of his DNA, or not really literally his DNA, but his figurative DNA. It's been, mentally, it's been bred into him that, hey, you're going to go out there and be a warrior. And so the battle, okay, so now, so those are the origins. Those are the backstories of both Lieutenant Dan and Jenny. Now, Jenny, we know she left home, went to California, got involved in the drug scene and the hippie scene of the late 60s. And, that's all cool. But, it's just like we're witnessing this lifestyle that obviously wasn't real healthy. We saw a couple of moments in Jenny's life where it's pretty obvious that she was considering taking her own life. And the first one happened right when Forrest was saying goodbye. So this is before she actually went to California. Forrest is saying goodbye, and he's in Memphis. It's outside of the strip club where she was playing the guitar. And, he tries to rescue her out of the situation, and she runs away, and he chases her down, and they're on this bridge in Memphis. And she says, do you remember when I was when we were kids, and I said, make us a bird and fly far, far away? Forrest and Jenny had prayed in the cornfield when her father was chasing after the kids and yelling. And that's where you saw him carrying the bottle. So Jenny is now on this bridge, and she says, do you think, so she says, do you remember when we talked about, I could fly far, far away? And he says, I do remember that. And she says, do you think I could fly off of this bridge? And Forrest kind of, thinking, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And he takes a step back, and that doesn't make sense. And he's like thinking, no, you can't fly. And so anyway, she doesn't jump off, but you see that little moment. All right. And then later on, now Jenny's out in California. Of course, Forrest is off in Vietnam doing what he's doing. And Jenny is in California on the balcony. Right before that, you see a bunch of drug paraphernalia, lines of cocaine, and people passed out on beds. And Jenny's like, she's, her makeup is all dark and her eyes are blackened out from tears, and she climbs up onto the railing of the balcony, and she's way up in the air, and you see her foot slip, and then she gets down, and she doesn't jump. But again, there's that moment where you're thinking this woman's going to take her own life. All righty. Now Jenny gets back to Forrest's house. She's resting. She's recovering. We don't see any sign of substance abuse at that point, but there certainly had been a long history of it, for those more years. And Forrest said she slept and slept and slept like she hadn't slept in years. And, literally that could be true. She really hadn't slept very well at all for many years. And so she's resting, she's recovering. She's in the safe environment with Forrest wants to marry her, ask her to marry. And she says, "You don't want to marry me." And she knows, she's like, you can kind of tell she knows she's messed up. And she's like, "You don't want to marry me." And of course, that's a sad moment for Forrest. And he says, "I'm not a smart man, but I know what love is." Jenny ends up coming to his bedroom and they make love that night. And then the next morning, Jenny gets up and leaves. She runs away. And it's funny because the taxi driver says, "Where are you running off to?" And she goes, "I ain't running." And yet, it's clear that she was running away. And we do that. We run away from our problems, or we run away from, realities rather than deal with them in a healthier way. So she runs off. All right. So then Jenny disappears. And now Lieutenant Dan's story, again, how he played out, he's supposed to die in the battle. And we, like, at the point when he's laying there on the field wounded, and he's talking on the radio, calling in the planes, and Forrest is saving all his fellow soldiers. And he's really looking for Bubba, his friend, but he finds Lieutenant Dan among the other soldiers, and he grabs Lieutenant Dan to drag him out. And Lieutenant Dan is fighting him, saying, "Get out of here, save yourself." And he says, I didn't ask you to save me." And so then a few years later, we see him in New York City, Forrest, and coincidentally, of course, there are no coincidences, Forrest and Lieutenant Dan meet in New York City, and they go and spend a couple days at Lieutenant Dan's apartment. And you hear him making references to, being a crippled freak. You can see he's in a deep state of depression. He's exercising his arm, right? He's drinking from the bottle. And there's one moment in the apartment when he says, he talks about, that's what the priest down at the VA or the minister down at the VA said, you will walk in the kingdom of heaven. He says, "Did you hear what I said? Walk." He goes, "How am I going to walk with these, this crippled body?" And so, a lot of anger, a lot of sadness, a lot of depression, and then also bitterness and sarcasm. And the sarcasm came out when it was like New Year's Eve, and they're celebrating, and Forrest says, "I'm going to get a shrimp boat." And he goes, "You're going to get a shrimp boat? What are you going to get a shrimp boat for?" He goes, "If you're ever a shrimp boat captain, I'll be your first mate." Oh, there, he's like making fun. And so it's like a lot of sarcasm. So it's just a lot of, like I said, anger, depression. Well, first we see depression, anger, bitterness. And so that's how we witness all this, dysfunctional behavior by the two of them. Now the resolution happens. Jenny had ran off, and then she sends a letter to Forrest, and now this is like 3 or 4 years later, something like that. And so Forrest comes into her apartment, and really we could see that now she's a mother, and she had, motherhood had kind of straightened her out, in which she went, "Wait a minute, I have to," we don't know this for sure, but we can surmise that she went, "Hey, motherhood, I gotta take care of this kid, I gotta be responsible." And so she has this job. She's working as a waitress, and she's, going off to work each day, and she's, taking care of her son. And the minute that she, not the very first minute, but within the first minute or two, she apologizes to Forrest, and she says, "Hey, if I ever did anything to hurt you, I just want to say I'm sorry." And she said, "I was really messed up." And so we knew that Jenny had, turned the corner and had, cleaned up her life and put her life on a different path. Now, Lieutenant Dan, we witness his evolution. So, of course, him and Forrest are on the boat together, and Lieutenant Dan is still, going through the anger, but he's slowly, kind of starting to come around. And we see a scene on the movie, and I've played this. This is one of the life lessons where Lieutenant Dan makes his peace with God, and he's sitting there on the edge of the boat, and he says, "Hey, Forrest, I never I never thanked you for saving my life. And he didn't actually say thank you. He just says, he acknowledged that I never thanked you for saving my life. And then he swings his leg stumps around, and he jumps off the boat, and you see a big splash come in, and then you see him doing the backstroke, swimming away. The water's nice and calm. The sky is all lit up. It's setting, and Forrest says he never actually said so, but I think he made his peace with God. And so, and then the last bit of resolution we see with Lieutenant Dan is he walks up at Forrest and Jenny's wedding at the movie, and he walks on his magic legs. He has the titanium legs. He has a prosthesis, and so he's just walking up, and Lieutenant Forrest is amazed, and he's with a woman, and we get introduced to her as Susan, his fiance, and she's of Asian descent. And so, it's like a full circle for Lieutenant Dan here. Here he was over in Vietnam, and then now he's engaged to an Asian woman, and he's walking, and he's got a nice haircut. He's cleaned up, he's shaven, and he looks good. And so anyway, that's that happy ending. And so I think we all have that ability to go ahead and create a new beginning for ourselves. And so I wanted to just share that. And I'm sure that our guest is going to talk about some of these same esteem things. I don't know whether, what his take on it, but he believes, I know that self-esteem is the key to all of this. And so I want to go ahead and invite our guest into the studio. He is there. He's actually at the center of the hurricane, or what used to be the center of the hurricane, kind of sitting right over his head, I think. Let's see if we got a good connection with him this morning. Hello there, Reverend Winn Henderson M.D., Reverend Dr. Winn Henderson. Welcome to the American Gumption Show. How are you?
I'm good, Steve. Thanks for having me.
And you are kind of right over, that hurricane is kind of right over top of you guys. You're down in North Carolina or something.
Yeah,
somewhere.
it's coming through right now.
Yeah, good. Well, hopefully we'll keep our fingers crossed, and our connection will last throughout the morning, and we'll have a good interview. So
I just wanted to say, Steve, before we get started, that if my computer goes down and my screen blacks out, give me a couple minutes to reboot.
Perfect.
So you can cover for me.
I will. I will be able to make stuff up. I'll launch into some other Forrest Gump story if that happens. So, but good. Thanks for saying that. So hopefully we'll have a connection. We'll see. Now, what I'd like to do is read a little introduction for you, and then I have a song that I like to play when any guest comes to the show for the first time. So if you'll just sit back and indulge me for a minute or two while we go through this procedure, we'll get you introduced, and then the rest of the time will be ours to talk about.
Okay.
All righty. So Reverend Winn Henderson M.D. is a retired physician with over 20 years of clinical experience. He has authored or co-authored 44 books. 44 books. That's an impressive list. I'm not going to read all 44, but some of them are The Cure for Addiction 3, The 4 Questions, Share Your Mission, The Deposition, The Definitive Guide to Recognizing and Avoiding Romantic Relationships, Scammers, and Catfishers. His most recent project is the ebook, let me try that again. His most recent project is the ebook, Look What Drug the Cat In, which discusses opioid addiction and the gateway drug alcohol. Yes, this is what your work is all about. For the last 40 years, Dr. Henderson has been counseling both in person and by telephone clients from all over the world on issues of addiction and finding one's life purpose. Life purpose is elusive. I've been searching that, and it's not something that just jumps up and lands in your lap. We have to work for it. He is the host of a 20-year-long running radio internet talk show, Freedom from Addiction, Share Your Mission, which seeks to give examples of how a life of purpose brings happiness, contentment, joy, peace of mind, and success. Dr. Henderson is an ordained Christian minister whose mission in life is to help those struggling with addiction. The doctor lives in the mountains of Western North Carolina with his dog, Ricky. So, Reverend Dr. Winn Henderson, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. Thank you. I'm honored that you're joining us, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, it's nice to be with you, Steve.
Good. So let me go ahead and play the first time guest theme. And now, if you ever come back a second time, we will not play this. So enjoy this. This will be the one and only time you'll hear this. Reverend Dr. Winn Henderson. All righty. Have you ever been welcomed to a show? You've done 20 years of radio. Have you ever been welcomed with a marching band before to a show? Whoops. There he goes. All righty. Well, we'll just give Dr. Henderson a minute to come back into the studio. I'm going to say that no, he has never been welcomed in by a marching band. That seems to be the standard answer that we get. So hopefully he'll rejoin us quickly. Is there anything about the Jenny and Lieutenant Dan portion that I didn't mention? If you have any comments about the movie, by the way, go ahead and please add them to our comment box. But yeah, it was funny. Forrest and Jenny had this. Forrest and Jenny had one type of relationship, and Forrest and Lieutenant Dan, of course, had a different type. And Forrest was the guy who, was the glue. And as I talked with Reverend Dr. Henderson, Forrest could have been a guy with low self-esteem. He could have been the guy who didn't, keep his chin up when life was not going the way it was supposed to. And yet he was like kind of that steady rock through the whole thing. And so he, and why do some people, get, sidetracked from the distractions of life, and other people handle it perfectly fine. All right. You're back again with us. How are you doing there this morning?
I'm doing good. The computer sounds a little sick this morning, but
well, we're going to blame it on Hurricane Zeta that's right above your head.
Right. Okay.
All righty. So you were actually at the University of Alabama med school back in the late 60s, right when the counterculture of peace and love and hippiness was all happening. You were getting your medical degree. Tell us about like the very beginning of your career when you worked for over 20 years as a doctor, an MD.
Well, I was a emergency room physician, and I saw all kinds of major tragedies in the emergency room. And I thought, well, what is the single related cause to these people coming in here? And the vast majority of them were related one way or the other in addiction, either their addiction or somebody else's addiction that had influenced them. So I thought to myself, well, if I could figure out what the cause of addiction was, I wouldn't have to work so hard. And that's where I got started, trying to figure out what causes addiction.
So it's kind of there was a selfish motive where you thought, hey, this is hard work. These people are coming in and I'm working real hard trying to save them. But I'm teasing a little bit about that. You obviously had a calling to this. As your career went along, when did you decide that you wanted to move more into, more of a counseling role than into, an actual medical role with helping people. And how did that happen?
Well, that happened as a result of a spiritual incident that I had in November of 1990. And God came to me in a dream, and he said, basically, I've got a book that I want written because so many of my children are suffering from addiction, and it's wrecking their lives. And if you will write it for me, I will promise you three things, which he did. He promised me three things. And I said, I'm on board. I'll start tomorrow. And I started the next day. I got the book written a couple years later. And that's how this started. But the reason that my program, which really isn't my program, it's God's program, is so effective is because God doesn't make mistakes. And if he tells you something and you do it, you'll get the result that he told you would get. And so I wrote it out in the form of a book, and we've had several editions in the meantime. But we're up to Freedom from Addiction 3 now, which is available at Amazon. And you can find out what God said and how the thing developed.
So I was going to share, let me get this screen share up there, and we'll show, there we go. We'll show, this is your book here, Freedom from Addiction 3. And I did see that when I was on Amazon, there was also a version 2 and a version 1. How, so how did this evolve over the years? You've been at it for 30 years since you wrote your first book. How did the message evolve from, the beginning days until what it is today? And why is it so successful?
Well, the program hasn't changed any from the first time. First book was called The Cure of Addiction. But all the things around it, trying to tell the story, how you're going to tell the story, what's going to be in the story, they have year after year after year changed a little bit. So you'll still get the same program that works, right, that started right at the beginning in the newest book. And I'll be putting out Freedom from Addiction 4 as soon as I get enough time to re-edit it.
Well, you're a busy guy. You have a radio show that you've been doing for, it's actually an internet radio show, but it also broadcasts on some channels stations from what I understand. But this show has been going on for 20 plus years. And from what I understand, it's the longest show of its kind. Tell us about the show.
Yeah, it's the longest running spiritually based radio internet talk show in the country. And like you said, a little over 20 years now. And if I don't die soon, I'll take that record to my grave because I'm not going to quit on it. It's got almost 1,000 interviews with celebrities and non-celebrities on the books that they've written on what their life purpose is. And you can go to my podcast site, www.freedomfromaddiction.libsyn.com, and you will be taken directly to the most recent podcast. And then you can scroll backwards through hundreds of podcasts and pick out something that interests you.
Yeah, you on the screen right below us is your website is Reverend Winn Henderson MD.com, and then the podcast is the freedomfromaddiction.libsyn.com. And so that was what you mentioned. So people can look and see that and go ahead and look that up. These 1,000 interviews, my goodness, that's you've talked to quite a few people. Is it always about what a life purpose is, and are they always, did everybody have the common denominator of overcoming some type of an addiction, or how do the conversations typically go?
Well, it's a mixed mash. Some are about one, some about the other, and most recently I have added to that, as an investigative journalist, truth just below the surface. And I look just below the surface of what's being told to you to give you my perspective of what the truth actually is. And I try to back it up with scientific information. So you could get any one of those three different types of program formats if you went over there to listen to the podcast.
Do your shows come out once a week, or do they come out at a certain time, or do they just come out like as you get them out? They obviously, to do 1,000, they have to be coming out on some kind of a regular schedule.
Yeah, well, I like to get at least one program out a week, sometimes more.
Okay, great. Well, congratulations on, let's see, if you did 50 a year, that's 20 years. Is that right? Is that 50 times 20? I think that's right. Yeah, my goodness. Well, 1,000 shows. Congratulations to you. Keep up the good work there. Let's go back to, what is the foundation of people overcoming an addiction? What is it? I mean, what's your core message in the simple? Obviously, they can buy your book, but tell people what it is, why is your methodology, and how does it differ than other people's methodologies?
Well, there's over 1,400 recovery programs in the country. Most of them are not spiritually based. And even if they say they're spiritually based, it's not to the level that mine is, because they didn't get their program material from God. And so when I look at what God told me, he said, in essence, low self-esteem is the basis for all addictive behaviors. And I'm helping people with over 30 different types of spiritual and behavioral addictions. So low self-esteem, well, now, how do you get that? It's because, for one reason or the other, you don't value yourself enough to be able not to need an addictive behavior to make yourself feel better. And so the program helps you overcome this low self-esteem. And part of it is in having a closer relationship with God, and knowing that God doesn't make any failures, any mistakes, and that you are a person who is fearlessly and wonderfully made. And regardless of what's showing up in your life at the present time, that's what you really are. Now you just have to be able to accept that, and then you're on your way to being able to break the chains of addiction.
Anybody who's done any work in the the recovery program is familiar with the 12-step program. Do you have a version of the 12-step program in your work?
Well, actually, 15, 20 years ago somewhere, I wrote a book which I explained and revised the 12-step program. They left out something. And so I took step 6 and 7, put them together. They were basically saying the same thing. And I put in a step for forgiveness, because without forgiveness, you can't elevate yourself and your self-esteem enough to be able to be cured. And that's why, as good as the 12 steps are, it's not a curative program. They admit that, and they just say, keep coming back. And they don't say, keep being addicted to 12-step groups, but basically that's what's happening. And we will keep you away from this behavior that you don't like, that's making your life miserable. So my program is a curative program, and the difference is in how we look at self-esteem and how we look at what they call your higher power. Now, in their estimation, you don't have to say God is your higher power. It could be nature, or somebody said a squirrel in my backyard is my higher power. Well, I won't go that far. You need to believe in God for this thing to work, because since it came from God, if you don't believe in God, how are you going to get it to work? It's not necessarily if you're one religion or another religion, but the basic bottom line is that you have to believe in a creator that created you, and that creator wants the best for you. And here is his plan on how you can have the best possible life that you possibly could.
I was intrigued when you said, forgiveness and self-forgiveness. It seems to me that any forgiveness is really self-forgiveness first and foremost, because once you forgive yourself, then there is no reason to, there's no more, anger at others. And so you don't need to forgive them any longer. So anyway, I'm all down with the forgiveness thing. And I've done my own recovery. I was drinking regularly for 25 years, and I knew it was a problem. And, it was just a habit in my case. I mean, it was like, I just like at 5 o'clock, you came around and you needed, it was like kind of a transition from the, what we call the work day to the, and you get trained into thinking that you are going to celebrate your victories or drown your sorrows. And so it just becomes a habit, and and I'm going along for years and years with this. And I knew it was an unhealthy thing. And so I ultimately just one day quit. And, it really came down to, doing that work of forgiveness and self-forgiveness. So,
well, it may be interesting to tell you that I've been a social drinker for 55 years. And I had a guest on my program that knew all the statistics about what alcohol does to you. And we had, I think, 6 programs on there. By the end of the 6th program, I said, I don't think I'm addicted to alcohol, but from what I hear, it's not good for me. So I'm going to test myself. Starting today, I'm never going to take a drink again. And I did that back in March of 19 with no problems. And so anybody that's listening to me, could get that book and see what those 25 different things, how alcohol hurts you. And then you can say to yourself, is it doing enough for me for good to put up with the 25 things it's doing for me for bad? And if you can lay it down at that point, then you're not addicted. But if you can't lay it down, then you need to get my book.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about, because I was a couple of months into it, into my living alcohol free. And I woke up one day and I went, I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm refreshed. I had a good night's sleep. And I realized at that moment that I hadn't really slept very good for years and years and years. You kind of pass out, but then you wake up, and you're dehydrated and you need to get up and get a glass of water. And it was like kind of a constant yo-yo on my body, in terms of like, a step forward, trying to live a healthy life, and then taking a step back. And essentially, I came to realize, without knowing what all 25 things that, ailments or poisons or detrimental things that it will do to your body, it's essentially like a poison, and your body has to go through the process of removing it and cleaning it up. So if you're feeding your body on a regular basis, well, it's a lot of wear and tear, isn't it?
It is. And my definition of addiction, just so you know, is if you have any behavior that you find to be hurting you in any respect, or hurting someone you love, like a family member, and you can't stop it for whatever reason, you're addicted to it. And so if you use that definition and you're honest with yourself, you'll find something that's not good for you that you can't stop.
Yeah, obviously drugs and alcohol are kind of obvious starting places in terms of addictions, but what are some of the more subtle addictions that people may have in their life that, maybe we don't think of as a typical addiction?
Well, I'll read you 30 something different addictive behaviors, and I'll read them quickly. And if one strikes a chord with you, you can remember it. Here we go. Overeating, codependency or control, marijuana, alcohol, hallucinogens, opiates, inhalants, depressants, stimulants, anabolic steroids, gambling, kleptomania, smoking, sociopathic or criminal behavior, undereating, sexual and non-sexual abuse, pornography, workaholism, excitement, power, greed, teenage rebellion, sexual compulsions, overspending, negative thinking, TV, internet, or smartphone overuse, relationship addiction, and collectaholism or hoarding. Those are the ones that I find people have that they want to do something about.
Yeah, that's a good list. Shopping, smartphone. All these things are really the smartphone. My goodness, that is an addictive. Little device, isn't it? Where it pings at you and reminds you, and we stare at it all day long. You see people walking down the street, walking into other people because they're not even paying attention to they're in their device as opposed to being in the present moment. Boy, it's a So your program, doesn't necessarily just have to do with alcohol or drugs, but has any of those kinds of things. You're saying that any of these behaviors is really a matter of a self-esteem issue.
Yeah, all addictive behaviors are just how you express your low self-esteem. Whereas one person would have one, another person would have another. Some people have more than one, but it's all equal. None are better or worse than another, and they can all be treated with the same program, and you get the same results, which is 100% cure rate if you do three things. And those three things are, first, you have to really want to get well. 2, you have to believe you can. And 3, as a result of those 2 things, you got to do the program. Program's in the book. It's easy to do. An 8th grader can read it. And if you'll do that, you will get well.
Yeah, that's great. So it's really just a matter of a desire to change, and then the belief that you can actually change, and then just going and following the procedures and the steps that you've outlined in your book.
That's right. That's right.
You have on your website, I saw that there were links for, and that's Reverend Winn Henderson MD.com, the website I'm referring to. And on that website, there's ways that people could work with you. And in your bio, I read that you work with people, over the phone, over the internet, and I'm assuming in person, maybe not so much this last year, but it sounds like you've actually been a remote worker. This year everybody went remote, but you've been doing this for many years. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. As I was getting older and older every year, my in-house appearances went down. And so rather than having people come into a building, I went to them by telephone or by Zoom, and we get the same results. And I don't have to travel. That's good.
Yeah, and you can spread your reach out much further, and you can stay in that nice little spot in North Carolina where you're at.
That's right.
Well, good. Well, this is great. There are a couple other books you have. Let me do a screen share again. Let's see. Whoops, I need to reload this. All righty, there we go. So your freedom from addiction, you said that you've updated this book a couple of times. It's up to version 3, and someday it'll be up to number 4. Now this next book is it's out of print, but the 4 questions, what were the 4 questions? What was that all about?
Well, it's the same deal, but I highlighted 4 important spiritual questions that if you can come up with a working answer to, you can have a much better life. And without getting into them at a deep level, the 4 questions are: who am I? Where did I come from? What am I doing here? And where am I going when I'm done? And so I kind of flesh that out in the book, help you understand the questions, tell you how I answer the questions, and that's a real important part of the book is answering those 4 questions.
Yeah, I did a lot of work, spiritual work, starting in 2009 and up through 2015 when I kind of had, or 2014 when I had like kind of a major, breakthrough from the 5 years of foundational work. But it was really about answering those questions. Who am I and what am I going to go do? It really comes down to what your life purpose is.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
All right. So now the secret to happiness.
Well, that's a book that's out of print now, but
but we all want to know what the answer to this one is.
The secret to happiness is finding your life purpose and pursuing it.
Yeah.
And I tell you in the book how to find your life purpose. So if you don't know what you're here for, in the book, I give you my idea of how the best way to answer that question.
Well, very good. That is if we can figure that out, then we're on the right path. Now, this last book, this is a book that you only published, I believe, last year, and it says The Definitive Guide to Recognizing and Avoiding Romantic Relationship Scammers and Catfishers. So this is really, I think, the online dating world. Is this correct?
Yeah, with so many millions and millions of people going to dating sites, and there being scammers that want to get your money, and they use catfishing to do it quite often. You're at great risk of losing all the way up to your entire savings if you get into one of these romantic relationship scams. So I went undercover for 6 months as an investigative journalist and found myself in Ghana and Nigeria and other places talking to the people that run these scams and finding out what kind of scams they run and how they do it and what they need to get from you in order to compromise your credit cards and bank accounts and things like that. And I put that information in this book.
Let's define catfishing for people who maybe aren't familiar with the term.
Well, catfishing is using pictures or text words that don't adequately describe you. Like if you said, I'm a lawyer and I have a big practice, and you were a construction worker, that would be catfishing. If you are a woman, let's say, and you put pictures of your daughter up and she's 20 years younger than you, that would be catfishing. And it goes way deep, and they're very creative in how they do this. But this is how they lure people into thinking that they're going to get a romantic relationship out of this contact. And the reason that it works is because there's so many lonely people in the country that will do practically anything to get rid of their loneliness. But loneliness is one of the 20-something psychological symptoms in the disease of addiction. And if you're lonely, you would be better off not going onto the internet looking for somebody, but going into this program and curing your loneliness in that way.
So how did you find these people you mentioned Nigeria or wherever else you went that are pulling these scams? How did you end up tracking these people down, and why did they give you access to them, and why did they tell you their story?
Well, I used a site called Plenty of Fish, which is the largest site in the world because it's free, and it has the most scamming for the same reason, because it's free. And so therefore, when they put up something that I thought looked suspicious, I would start corresponding with that person. And over the course of that correspondence, I would find out that indeed they were a scammer. And then you say, how did I get their information? Well, scammers want one thing. money. So I paid them a fee to talk to me and let me put it in my book. And
Oh,
it's just a cost of research.
yeah. Did you like, when you paid them the first time, did you say, here's the deal, I'll pay you, but you're going to talk to me? Or did you have to kind of, reel them in a little bit?
Well, some of the scammers, didn't want to admit what they did and took longer to get them into the program and everything. Some of them came on board relatively quickly with their first offer. And as they were trying to scam me using catfishing as a method, I remember, and this is an important story in the book, but they had me hooked for 2 months. And I would send the person maybe like a gift card, and that's one of the ways that they get into your bank account, but a gift card. And if they have 3 pieces of information, then they can use that to rob you. Well, so I gave them that information, and within 2 or 3 days, I got a FedEx delivery to my home of 20 yellow roses from the person that I thought was someone that was interested in me, but actually it was a scammer. And I don't even like yellow roses, but they are so above their law in their idea that they didn't mind using my credit card. They stole the information to pay for the roses that they sent me.
My goodness. So you were, it was a little bit of a dangerous game you were playing there, because at this point, the scammers had your information.
Yeah, that's right. And I just changed my credit card and
Sure.
bank account and learned not to do that particular thing that they had set up where they could get into your bank.
Yeah. So is the, would you say that, people are lonely. Obviously, they want to end the loneliness. I get that they can go to your website and take the program and learn about this and help themselves, and that's all cool. But these dating sites, do you have any opinion about whether they're good, bad, or indifferent? I guess what's your overall feeling about them? Obviously, the scamming part is not good, but overall, what's your impression?
Overall, it's a marketing program that makes money for the dating sites.
Mm.
And they have hundreds of thousands of members, and only a very small percentage of them find the love of their life and get married. So it's not necessarily a good way to spend your money, but people have told me, well, where can I find somebody? I don't have anybody in church, and the people in Walmart aren't my type. And so where can I do that? Well, this online dating is a way of doing it. And I've had lots of relationships over the years because I was researching the books and everything. And I made lots of friends, but I never got past being engaged once. And that was only for 19 days. And so it didn't work out for me so far, but I'm still there looking and I'm still talking.
Yeah, well, very good. I'm a single man. I've played that game and I've been involved and I understand, and I'm certainly aware of the whole scamming thing and know what that can be all about, and like to think that I'm smart enough to avoid it. But hey, we're always learning something new, and when matters of the heart take over, no telling what you'll do. So,
well, I'll tell you, you said you think that you're smart enough to avoid it. Well, they got me for 2 months, and I'm a pretty smart guy.
Yeah, and you're the guy who wrote the book. So there we go.
And I was doing the investigative work while they were scamming me. So I don't think you're smart enough, and I don't think anybody out there is smart enough. You need to get this book and find out some of the ways that they can take you.
we only have a minute or two left. We'll wrap up. You've also done some investigative work on COVID, from what I understand. What's your feeling about this?
Well, I go to medical doctors, scientists, researchers, and give the people the information that the news media won't give you. Mm-hmm. There's so much lying going on and so much making a political statement that you can't get the truth from Twitter or Facebook or the the media and everything. And I tell you what the truth is, everything from what over-the-counter drugs and minerals and supplements you can take that doesn't require a prescription to keep from getting COVID. And if you do get it, prescription drugs that you can take that'll keep you out of the hospital and keep you well and alive.
Yeah, that was one of the news. One of the things I did here in just the last week or two is that the mortality rate is like really, really very low at this point in terms of our ability to treat it. Obviously, there's an at-risk population, but for someone who's of adequate health, and certainly a younger population, there's the mortality rate is like very, very, very low. So anyway, I don't know if it's
some people say it's close to the death rate of influenza.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't necessarily trust everything I hear out there, and we're glad that you're doing work in that regard. So, Reverend Dr. Winn Henderson, I sure do appreciate your joining us and sharing, your body of work over the last 40 plus years. And, it's a fascinating journey that you took from more of a scientific background in the medical area to moving into more of the spiritual background in terms of helping people. And really, it's funny, you didn't change in that you're helping people. It's just the question of, how you went about helping people that evolved over the years. What would you like to share with us? We would encourage people, if you need some help, or if you're curious about any of this work, please listen to his podcast at freedomfromaddiction.libsyn.com, and his main website where you could contact him directly is Reverend Winn Henderson M.D.com. What would you like to share with us in wrapping up?
Well, I would like to say that to the extent that I have the time and I'm able to do it, I would if you have a problem that you want to discuss, just give me a call at my cell phone number and we'll go over that problem. It won't cost you anything.
Well, that's very kind. So if you're someone who's suffering from some kind of an addiction and you need to get some help, here, Dr. Reverend Winn Henderson MD.com, and his phone number is listed there. You can call him up and have a conversation.
Yes.
Well,
thanks
good.
for being on the program.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that you joined us, and I'm honored that you came in, and thank you for sharing your time this morning.
Bye.
All righty. Well, that was, again, Reverend Winn Henderson MD.com. Please go and, if you need some help, go ahead and search him out. And his books are available on Amazon.com. And I didn't even think about the addiction to the internet dating sites. Oh my gosh, I might have to check myself in. Anyway, we'll be back tomorrow. Now, tomorrow's program is going to be a deep dive into the Admanity Protocol. I had Brian Gregory, the CEO and founder of Admanity, on the program last week, and we kind of painted the big picture of what that is all about. Admanity is a combination of advertising plus humanity, and it's really designed to use language and communicate, whether you're doing post on social media or you're doing emails, or whether you're actually running what would be considered a traditional advertising campaign where you're doing paid advertising. You want to make sure your message is speaking to the people that want and need what you offer. And so it's a way of doing business that makes sense in this day and age, where we speak directly to the people that can most benefit from what we have. And it's kind of that idea that people don't need to be tricked any longer. They just need to be shared the truth about what it is that you offer, and do it in a way. And this program allows you to do it in a way that will attract them, and then they can discover who you are. Alrighty, so that's going to be tomorrow. We'll do the deep dive into that. Everybody have a great day. We will see you tomorrow on Friday, right back here at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. Have a great day, everybody. All righty, and that's today's show. But I wanted to thank Bettina for listening in and for letting us know that she enjoyed today's interview. So thank you very much, Bettina. All right, everybody, we'll see you tomorrow.